These are all the external buttons on the Panasonic Lumix LX100 Mark II. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Martin. I'm a photographer, designer and content creator from Sweden, and I have been doing photography for the past 8 years. Now I'm thinking that we're going to start a new series. I want to do 3 episodes. The first one being this one, and in this episode we will go through every single button on the external part of the Panasonic Lumix LX100. And then for the second part we're going to look through all the internal things on this camera, all the different menus and settings like that. And then for the third and last episode we will talk about the settings that I use, how I set up the camera, and just general tips and tricks if you are using this camera. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the other videos. But now for this one. I will timestamp the whole video, so if there is something that you are specifically looking for, you can find it down in the timeline, so you can just move to the parts that you find interesting. Grab yourself something to drink and let's dive in to the camera. Alright, let's start on the bottom of the camera, and this is where you insert both your memory card and your battery. And to open it up, you just move this toggle to the side and open up the bottom. And for the memory card, it uses just normal SD cards, and the battery is a Panasonic DMW BLG10 battery. And the second thing that is located on the bottom of the camera is where you attach your tripod. So it has this threaded hole with a maximum depth of 5.5 millimeters, and on the bottom is also the camera's speaker. Now let's flip the camera around and take a look at the top of it. Here you have your on and off switch, which is just a toggle that you can toggle between on and off. And the on and off switch is also attached to the shutter dial. And this shutter dial is what is going to the shutter speed on your camera. Next to the shutter speed dial, you have your shutter button. This is the button that you press to take the image. It has two different strengths. So if you can push it halfway through or all the way to the bottom. Like with most cameras these days, and pushing it halfway will set focus, and then pressing it all the way down will take the image. But on the shutter button, you also have your zoom, and you can see that it says W and T. And if you push it towards the W, you will go to a wider perspective. And if you push it towards the T, will make it a more narrow, so you will zoom in. Then there is one third dial on the top of the camera, and this is the exposure compensation. And it goes from -3 all the way up to +3. And what exposure compensation is just that it sort of lets you to override the light meter inside of the camera. So the light meter inside of the camera is going to calculate the amount of light that is hitting the sensor and going to expose the camera according to that. But what you can do with the exposure compensation is that you can override that and add more brightness or more darkness to your image. Explained very shortly. Then you also have a button that says IA and not AI. This is something else. IA stands for Intelligent Automatic Mode. So if you press the IA button, you will toggle between Intelligent Automatic Mode or whatever, or your other setting. And what Intelligent Automatic is that it is sort of an automatic mode where the camera is going to set all the different settings for you. All you have to do is point towards your subject and press the shutter button. But you won't have any control over all of the other settings, such as shutter speed, aperture, ISO. But this button here on the top is just a quick toggle to turn it on and off. And now for the final button on the top of the camera, and that is your first function button. And it is indicated by it saying FN1. And a function button is just a button that you can program to do whatever you want it to do. And this is something we will go deeper into in the next episode of this video series, where we talk about the Panasonic Lumix LX100 Mark II. But all you need to know for now is you can assign whatever feature, or sort of whatever feature you want, to this specific button. And these are really good because it lets you customize your camera to fit your photography better. Then on top of the camera you also have your hot shoe mount, where you can attach different accessories for example, an external flash, and when you purchase the camera, you do get a small flash that you can attach to this hot shoe mount. One important thing to remember is that a lot of people like to attach shotgun microphones on the top of their cameras for vlogging and stuff, but remember that this camera does not have any microphone inputs, so you can't use any microphones that have inputs to the cameras with this camera. Right in front of the hot shoe mount there are two small holes. That is where the built-in microphone for this camera are located. On the top of the camera, next to the hot shoe mount, you can also see this little symbol here, which is a circle with a line straight through it, and that just indicates where the sensor inside of the camera is located. So if you imagine that line just continuing straight through the camera, that is where your sensor is located. Alright, perfect. Let's move on to the front of the camera. And here you have your lens and a lens cap, which you can remove by just pressing on both sides to take it off. And the lens itself is a Leica DC Vario Sumilux. And then you also have a few different settings on the side of the lens. And first of all, you have your aperture, which you can set with this haptic ring around the lens. You can see it goes from A and then to 1.7 all the way up to 16. This is where you set your aperture, or in other words, the size of the opening that lets in light to your sensor through the lens. And a lower number means a larger opening, which also means more light will hit the sensor. It also means that the background is going to be much blurrier, and a higher aperture of say 16, the opening is much smaller, which means less light gets into the sensor, but more will be in focus. And then next to the aperture ring, you have your focus dial. By spinning this, you will set focus if you are in manual focus mode. And while we are talking about focus, you can set the different focus modes on the side of the lens. Here you have three different options. You have manual focus, MF, autofocus flower, which I think is autofocus macro, and then you have normal autofocus as just AF. On top of the lens, next to the selection for the different focus modes, you have the possibility to change different aspect ratios. But important to note when we are talking about different aspect ratios is that this camera has a micro four thirds sensor, but the different aspect ratios don't use the whole sensor. But what this means is just that even though this camera has a 21 megapixel camera sensor, it can't use all of those 21 megapixels when you're shooting with the camera, because when you're using these different aspect ratios, you crop in a little bit on the sensor, and the largest you can get is a 17 megapixel. I think it is 17, around 17 at least. Yeah, so here it is. So if you want the highest quality, you should shoot in 4:3, because then you get a resolution of 16.82 megapixels. Then at 3:2 you get 16.2, and then a 16:9 aspect ratio will give you 14.96 megapixels, and a 1:1 will get you 12.6 megapixels. So even though the camera has 21 megapixels, you never use the whole sensor, so just keep that in mind. Then on the front of the camera, you also have this small little lamp here. This is just a indication light that will help you when you are doing self-timing photography, so it will blink, but it is also a help for the autofocus to find focus. So when you are in autofocus mode, it will light up when you try to take an image. Perfect. Now the only thing that we have left is the back of the camera, where there probably is the most amount of different buttons. So let's get into it. All right, and let's start at the bottom right corner, where you have a button that says DISP, which stands for display. And if you press this button when the camera is on, you will toggle between different display modes. So what is going to be visible on the LCD screen. So by pressing this button, you just toggle between different display modes Next to that, you have the FN3 button, which is your third function button. But this button doesn't only work as a function button, it is also a discard button and a cancel button. So you can see underneath FN3, you see that there is a trash can and an arrow going back. For example, are in your gallery looking through your images, you can use that button to delete an image. So that button has multiple different purposes depending on where you are in your camera. Then moving up a little bit, you have your control dial. You can spin this around, and this dial is just used to sort of maneuver throughout the camera and can also be used to change different settings. But you can also press it on all different sides. You can go up, to the left, to the right, or down. So it works both as a thing that you can rotate, but you can also press it as a button. And as you can see, there are 4 different symbols around the edge of this control dial. That just indicates what will happen if you press on that side of the control dial. So first of all, if you press on the top of it where it says ISO, this is where you will change you will get the ability to change your ISO settings. On the right side, you can see it says WB, which is white balance. And if you press on that side, you will get to the white balance settings. And if you press on the bottom, you can choose between different shutter modes. So for example, if you want to use a burst, so if you hold down the shutter, it will take multiple images in a burst sequence. Or if you want to set it to a timer, a self timer, anything like that, you can press down and you will get those settings on the screen. And then if you press on the left side, then that is an automated focus mode. And then finally, in the middle of the control dial, you have a menu/set button. So if you press that, you'll get into your menu of the camera, but it is also your set button, meaning if you highlight something on the screen and press the set button, it is going to do that action. Then you have your media button or show button. If you press this, you will just get to your gallery and you can look through the images that you have already photographed. And next to that, you have your Q menu or your FN2, which is your function 2 button. And the function 2 button is you can program it to do whatever you want as previously. And the Q menu is where you get your access to your quick selection menu. So press that and you will get access to more settings on your camera. Then for the top row of buttons, you have to the right your AF/AE lock button. And this is a way to lock your exposure or lock your focus when you're taking images. Next to that is your record button. So start and stop recording if you're doing video. Next to that is your function 4 button. So FN4, and next to that is your function 5 button. So there are in total 5 different functions button that you can program to do different things. And as I said, we will talk more about that in the next video, so stay tuned for that one. And then next to that, there is a small dial where you can change sort of the focus of the viewfinder. I don't know the correct term of this. Someone might want to help me down in the comments. And you can rotate this dial and continue to rotate it while you're looking through the viewfinder. And when everything is the sharpest, all the different signs, I guess, when they are sharp, then it is correctly focused for your eyesight, I guess. So this is a way to sort of, if you need glasses, for example, you can change the settings so that it fits your eyesight. I hope that makes sense. And then finally, you have your viewfinder. You have this small window you look through. Next to that is also the sensor that sort of feels when you are using the viewfinder or not. So if you cover that, the viewfinder will light up and the LCD screen will turn off. All right, and those were all the different buttons and settings that are on the outside of the camera. One more thing to note though is that on the side there is also an opening for if I can get it open. There is also an HDMI input and micro HDMI and a USB charging port on the side of the camera. And those were all the different external parts of the Panasonic Lumix LX100 Mark II. And if you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, please do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.